You're standing in a room that smells like flowers and grief, and you don't know what to do with your hands. Someone you love is gone. There are logistics now: the clothes, the casket. The right thing to say to the person standing closest to the loss. You check your phone without meaning to. You feel guilty for checking it. Death, even now, after thousands of years of practice, still leaves you fumbling for a script, so you assume your ancient ancestors had no script at all. No funeral homes, no grief counselors, no religion in the way you understand it. Surely they just left the body where it fell. Survival of the fittest doesn't leave room for ceremony, but the real answer is far stranger. Long before writing, long before agriculture, long before anything that looks like a modern ritual, early humans were already doing something deliberate with their dead. They were doing it on purpose, and the reason might not be love at all. In northern Iraq, there is a cave called Shanidar. In the 1950s, an archaeologist named Ralph Selecki began digging there, and what he found rewrote what scientists thought they knew about Neanderthals. Buried in the cave floor was a skeleton, later named Shanidar 4. Around the body, soil samples revealed clusters of pollen. Pollen from yarrow, from cornflowers, from other flowering plants, all bunched together in a pattern that looked to Selecki like someone had laid the body down on a bed of flowers. The press loved it. The world fell in love with the idea of the gentle, grieving Neanderthal, more like you than anyone had dared to admit. Some scientists pushed back. They argued that burrowing rodents called Persian gerds drag flowering plants into their tunnels and could have left the pollen behind by accident long after the body was buried, not as part of it. So was it real or was it rodents? Here is where it gets interesting. In 2018, a research team led by archaeologist Graham Barker returned to Shanidar Cave and found something new: a previously undiscovered Neanderthal skeleton, now called Shanidar Z. The body was curled on its side, hand near its face, resting in a hollow that had been deliberately cut into the cave floor. Around it, researchers again found concentrations of pollen and other plant material, arranged in ways that were hard to explain through chance alone. The case for intentional symbolic burial in Neanderthals got stronger, not weaker. This matters more than it might seem. Neanderthals were not supposed to have rituals. For decades, the assumption was that symbolic thought, the kind that drives ceremony and meaning, belonged only to Homo sapiens. Shanidar suggested otherwise. It suggested that the impulse to mark a death with something other than indifference might be older than your species itself. But why would it exist at all? What does a Neanderthal or an early human gain from arranging flowers around a corpse? This is where archaeologist Paul Pettit offers a colder, more practical answer. In his research on the origins of human burial, Pettit argues that the earliest reasons for burying the dead were not primarily emotional. They were functional. A body left exposed attracts scavengers. It attracts disease. It rots in a way that disturbs the group living nearby, psychologically and physically. Digging a hole and covering the body solved an immediate practical problem. Pettit's argument is that meaning came later, layered on top of a behavior that started as simple hygiene and safety. Think about that for a second. The most human thing you do, marking a death with ceremony, might have started as something closer to pest control. And yet over tens of thousands of years, that practical act became something else entirely. At Kafse Cave in modern-day Israel, archaeologists uncovered the remains of early Homo sapiens dating back roughly 100,000 years. One burial held the skeleton of a child, its arms wrapped around a set of deer antlers, deliberately placed. There was no scavenger problem that required antlers. There was no hygiene reason to position a child's arms around them. This was something else. This was meaning, placed there on purpose, by someone who wanted that moment and that body to be remembered a particular way. Somewhere between the practical hole in the ground and the child cradling antlers, something shifted. Burial stopped being about the body. It started being about the people left behind. This is the part most people miss. Funerals were never really for the dead. In the 1980s, a trio of psychologists named Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pyszczynski built an entire field of research around an idea first proposed by the anthropologist Ernest Becker. The idea is called terror management theory, and it starts with a simple, unsettling fact. You are the only animal that fully understands it is going to die, and that knowledge creates a low hum of existential anxiety running underneath your daily life, whether you notice it or not. Solomon, Greenberg, and Pyszczynski ran dozens of experiments to test what happens when people are reminded of their own mortality. In one famous study, judges were asked to set bail for a defendant, but first, half of them were prompted to think briefly about their own death. The judges who had been quietly reminded of mortality set bail nearly 9 times higher than those who hadn't. Death wasn't just sad, it was destabilizing. And the mind's response to that destabilization was to cling harder to its own group, its own values, its own sense of order. This is the missing piece. Burial rituals, flowers, antlers, carefully positioned bodies were never just about honoring the person who died. They were a defense mechanism for everyone still alive, a way of saying out loud or in silence that there is order here, that death does not unravel the group, that the world still makes sense. So when a Neanderthal arranged flowers around a body in a cave 60,000 years ago, that act may have done double duty. It dealt with a literal corpse, and it dealt with the panic rippling through the small band of survivors standing around it, watching one of their own disappear forever. Now think about the funeral you've actually attended, the hymns, the eulogy that insists the person lived a full life or is in a better place. The flowers again, always the flowers. None of it changes the biological fact of death, but it changes how the room feels. It gives grief a shape. It gives the living something to do with their hands instead of simply standing there, undefended, in front of the void. Even the parts of modern death that feel uniquely contemporary follow the same ancient blueprint. The Facebook memorial page that fills with comments years after someone is gone, the candlelight vigil for a stranger whose death made the news, the instinct to light a candle, post a photo, write "rest easy" under a stranger's obituary, even though you never met them. You are not performing empathy out of nowhere. You are running software that is, by some estimates, over 100,000 years old. There's a reason cultures across the world, with no contact with one another, independently develop funeral rites. Egyptians mummified their dead, believing the body needed to remain intact for the next life. The ancient Greeks held wakes, displaying the body so the community could grieve together before burial. Indigenous groups across the Americas built elaborate burial mounds, some stretching for miles, turning death into geography. Different gods, different stories, the same underlying behavior. Mark it, ritualize it. Don't let the group fracture under the weight of losing one of its own. Even the specific objects change less than you'd expect. Flowers at Shanidar, antlers at Kafse, lilies on a casket today. Across tens of thousands of years, humans keep reaching for something from the natural world, something beautiful and temporary, and placing it next to permanent loss. Maybe because beauty that fades on its own terms feels less frightening than beauty cut short by death. Maybe it's a way of saying, this too was always going to end. And that's all right. What does this mean for you? The next time you're standing in that room that smells like flowers and grief, it means the awkwardness you feel isn't a personal failure. It's not that you don't know how to grieve properly. It's that grief was never meant to be private. It was built over tens of thousands of years to be witnessed, shared, choreographed by a community standing shoulder to shoulder against the same fear. The discomfort you feel standing alone with your thoughts is your mind correctly recognizing that this moment isn't supposed to be faced alone. It's supposed to be faced together, with ritual filling the silence where words run out. Your ancestors in that cave in Iraq weren't primitive people fumbling through grief without the tools to understand it properly. They were doing exactly what you do today, just with flowers instead of flowers arranged by a funeral director, with a hollow cut into stone instead of a plot of cemetery grass. The need behind them never did. You're standing in a room that smells like flowers and grief, and you know exactly what to do with your hands. You always have. You're just doing what your species has always done in the face of the one thing it can never outrun, reaching for ritual, for flowers, for each other, and quietly proving once again that death may end a life, but it has never once managed to end the group left behind to remember it.